first, do bin workers really need to end their strike? They've been striking continuously since early March. They say changes to roles mean that some workers will be £8,000 worse off a year. But Angela Rayner said a new deal is on the table when she visited Birmingham yesterday, although she won't reveal the details of what's been offered. Let's have a listen.
Well, we know that the council have been engaged in consultation and discussion and negotiation with Unite. That's a good move. That's happened over the weekend and the last couple of days. There is a significantly improved offer on the table for the workers, and I'm urging Unite to suspend their action and to accept that offer.
Now, in the worst affected areas, residents haven't had their bins collected since Christmas. But in a positive sign, some trucks have managed to get out of the depot and collect wheelie bins this morning. Faiza, do you support these strikes?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have huge sympathy for the people that are seeing their bins, up way high. And
rats in the street. Constituent was bitten by a rat.
I hate rats so much, and I know, like most people, I have huge sympathy with them. But I also do have sympathy with the bin workers in the sense that these are low-paid workers who are seeing their situations get worse. They have a council that went bankrupt, seems to be trying to save money in various ways, and they're one of the targets of that. And, quite rightly, they have come together. That's what a union does. They've come together and tried to push back and say, let's have a negotiation. Now, I don't know what this new deal is. Certainly, if it's a good deal, it's up to the workers to vote on that and decide if they want to take it. So, I think there are two sides to this story. And I do think also we should look at the way the council's behaving and look at what they've done, because I was reading up on it and they've taken on loads of agency workers, which undermines the rights of those long-term workers. It's quite expensive. The council's in all kinds of trouble because of bankruptcy. So we do need to understand that, and we do need to support low-paid workers. At the same time, you need this sorted because, of course, it really is harmful for people on the streets.
Tim, we've been trying to find out what this deal is. We haven't been able to get anything from the council or from Angela Rayner. But what do you make of these strikes? I mean, strikes by their nature are meant to cause disruption.
Yeah.
And they have at least achieved that.
Yeah. Well, it's a terrible image for Birmingham, our second city. People are watching this image from around the world. Just as a few years ago, remember when the Edinburgh Festival was on and they had something similar? And then, of course, there's the public health. Share your hatred for rats, and people are frightened. The smell must be awful as the temperature rises at the moment. And I have sympathy with who wants to be as a binman? Women aren't fighting for equality in that particular job that much. It's not a job many people want. So they deserve a good wage. I would ban strikes, though, in essential services like this. In return, I would give compulsory arbitration so that the council and the bin workers were forced to sit down and someone independent would, agree a salary for them. Because you cannot have a major city in our country with all the public health implications like this. It's a very serious situation. If it was happening in London, we'd be talking about it all of the time. But it's happening in Birmingham, it's happened in Edinburgh, and we can't let it happen in other cities, because if they do get more pay this time, the danger is it will start to be other unions in other cities will take similar action, and we'll have this repeated across the country. So compulsory arbitration in these essential services is what I support.
Well, look, let's speak to Naeem Yusuf, a Birmingham resident who has been using his van to try and help neighbours dispose of their waste. Naeem, thanks for joining us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing? Thank you for letting me on the show. As you can see, we're here in Small Heath in Birmingham, and the rubbish has still not been collected here. It's unfortunate, but this is the state of the affairs in parts of Birmingham still.
Naeem, you've been using your own van, if I'm right, to try and clear up the mess. What have you been doing? Taking it where? Where have you been disposing it?
So what happens is we still have a sense of community here within certain parts of Birmingham, because for decades we've been left to our own devices. So somebody like me, I have a works van. I take my racking out. I help my local community, my local neighbours, and we book in slots as and when we can get them. So my slots have been at my local tips. I've been taking my rubbish, my neighbour's rubbish, my parents' rubbish, anybody that can help out within my locality to the local tip, as I have been today, early in the morning today at 7 o'clock.
Naeem, what we're asking the question of whether the binmen should end their strike today. They've been offered a new deal. We don't quite know what this deal is, but what are your thoughts? Do you want the binmen to end their strike as soon as possible? Do you sympathise with what they're trying to do? How do you feel about the strikers?
The residents themselves don't want to get involved in anything that's between the council and the actual bin workers. I mean, we support our local bin workers, obviously. Nobody wants to take £8,000 of a cut within their salaries. That could be a quarter of their salaries. But for us, our primary concern is getting stuff like this shifted. I mean, if you look down the road now, just today, if you just follow me down, you'll see that the binmen are actually here today. But areas like these have been for decades left to their own devices, which is why we have a community spirit at this moment in time, because we're helping each other out. We've got no option.
So these are these privately contracted bin people that are coming to pick up rubbish?
Yes, and that's another issue that we've got now, because as you all know, the Birmingham City Council, our council, is actually in debt, and it's bankrupt. So that's coming out of our taxpayers' money, from our tax that we're paying, which is now going to be obviously allocated from wherever funds they are going to be taken from, which means that money from elsewhere won't be able to be put into the local communities.
And your council tax is going to go up, Naeem, because as you mentioned, Birmingham City Council has been in debt. So you're going to be paying more. How do you feel about being charged more and looking at your streets looking like this?
Well, it's unfortunate, but our council tax has gone something like 17.5%, 18% of the past 2 years. So we're paying a lot more money for a lot less services. There used to be a time when people used to pay more, expecting more, but unfortunately that's not the case. And people are now up in arms. There's a resentment within the community towards our local elected members who have not taken this to the right people, who have not actually spoken on our behalf. Unfortunately, it is unfortunate, but we don't seem to have the right people fighting our corner.
Naeem, thank you for giving us your time, and thank you for sharing what's going on in Birmingham. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you.
Naeem Yusuf there, and you got a clear view of what's happening.
Yeah,
yes,
that sort of person I think we need in local government, actually. I don't know him well, so want more information, but someone who is actually willing to get off their behinds and sort out a local problem, probably quite community rooted, sort of person you probably want there in.
But those are the people that never really get through. I mean, those are the people that don't.
Interesting.
Well, you have experience of that, don't you?
Interesting, though, that hearing from Naeem that the community's trying not to get involved in the politics of the strikes and leaving that to the workers and the council. I wonder if that's the same feeling of people watching at home. After the break, we're going to be taking your calls on whether bin workers in Birmingham should end their strikes. Sadia is in Birmingham. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Are you affected by these strikes where you are in Birmingham?
Yes, totally. I'm part of a Friends of Parks, and we see so much fly tipping and litter, trade waste on the park grounds, fridges, freezers, mattresses, furniture. It's just not household waste, it's commercial waste now as well.
It's commercial waste being dumped on there. How long has this been going on where you are?
It's been at least 2 months. I mean, since this December, nobody's had any recycling waste taken. They've frozen the green waste as well. So even we're not even being able to get rid of our mowed grass and things from the garden. So that's all accumulating. People are starting to do bonfires in their garden to get rid of waste themselves. I'm thinking of getting myself a little fire pit and roasting marshmallows and dumping my waste there as well. I'm worried about.
If you do, please be careful. Yeah. Please be careful. We've just had a big warning about wildfires with the weather being so dry.
And I'm worried because, we were trying to improve the environment and the air quality.
Sadia, where do you stand with the strikers? Would you see them want to come back to work, just accept whatever deal they've been offered today, accept it and get back to work? Or do you support their strikes?
I support it. We need a better wage. Inflation, costs of living are going up. They deserve better as well. It's not an easy job. And it needs to be done. The streets need to be cleared now immediately. There's going to be some sort of plague coming up soon in the warmer weather. We've got rats running around.
Oh, gosh. Sadia, thank you. Thank you for kicking us off. Interesting that there is still that support there, even though the rubbish is all over the streets. David is in Somerset. David, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts? Do you think they just need to take whatever offers on the table and get back to work?
Well, when I spoke to your researcher, and my opinion was they shouldn't, I don't agree with strikes or trade unions or anything like that. However, my concern was the fact, because people are trying to be green and environmental friendly, there's so many different collections. Why not just put it all out in the same day, and they just, like it used to be, instead of it's waste garden waste today, next week it's going to be recycling, the week after it's going to be this. They're doing 3 trips, when they could just do it in one and then go into the area. But, I was listening to the local residents on the telly, between speaking to your researcher and your producer, and to discover they've been asked to take an £8,000 wage reduction. That's just made me angry. I think it's disgusting. So my opinion's kind of slightly changed to keep on the strike. No one should be out Angela Rayner saying there's a better offer. What? Only take £4,000 wages off, kind of thing, or only take $2,000 off. No one should take that kind of money off their wages. It's ridiculous.
Well, we don't know what that new offer is, David, but I think there's still quite a lot of support for the workers. Now, it wasn't all of them that were going to take that pay cut, and it also had to do with the safety officers as well, which was part of the deal. David, thank you. Let's hear from Joe, who's in London. Joe, can you imagine this happening in London?
Oh my God, I don't even want to think, because with all the developments and the built-up areas, and oh my God, it would be absolutely atrocious. But at the moment, the way I see it is that the government needs to come halfway and compromise somewhere, because they're going to have a massive pandemic if there's rats and foxes and all sorts of feces, whatever's running around in those things. But on the flip side, aren't the refuse workers thinking, hang on, we're going to be actually picking this all up eventually? It's going to be 50 times worse than what their average day probably is. And it's a horrible job, and I totally respect that.
Yeah.
And they should get paid the right amount, because no one wants to do that kind of work. But this is going to get worse and worse. And how many volunteers and people are going to clear it up? At the end of the day, they're going to have a mucky job when they do eventually find some compromise, and it'll be 100 times worse than what it is
Joe,
now.
do you agree with
something needs to be done.
Joe, do you agree with Tim, who said that, look, these kind of essential services, they shouldn't be allowed to strike? There should be arbitration, an independent body that decides what's a fair wage, and that's it. But they can't go on strike.
Yes.
Would you support that?
Yes, I do support that, because at the end of the day, health, safety, pandemics, these are going to be government problems, and this is for the safety of the public that live in the country. So it could be a much bigger, like the other lady said, plague, etc. It's a bit deep, but there is always that chance that you could end up with a much bigger problem, and the government will have to deal with that. And so how much money are they going to spend when, God forbid, that happens?
Yeah.
So they do really need to find a balance with this issue.
OK. Joe, thank you. Let's speak to Shirley, who's got in touch from Hampshire. Shirley, welcome to the show. Do you support these strikes, or do you think they just need to take whatever offer is on the table right now and get back to clearing those streets?
I think the first thing we've got to ask ourselves is, what would happen if nobody wanted to be in the refuse collection section of work? If we woke up tomorrow and all these men that are on strike now had found new jobs, so they were never going to come back. And the other thing is, I'd like to see somebody get a double mattress into their wheelie bin or an office chair. Because this isn't ordinary rubbish.
No.
As a task, you mean?
It.
Well, they've been saying, Faiza, that the amount of rubbish that has accumulated, it's not a question that even if they take the offer today, they go back to work, it's going to take a couple of days and it's going to be gone. This is going to take weeks to clear off the streets.
Yeah, and they'll know that. These workers will know that. So you need to understand that they are taking this strike action. And when you're on strike action, you don't get paid, right? So they're taking this strike action because they feel so strongly about this issue. And I really have found it heartening to hear so many people talk about the need to support these workers. These workers will live in those communities most likely as well. So they are being affected in both ways. But they think that this is a really important point at which to stand up to the bosses. And just to say, in terms of withdrawing your labour as a last resort, and this would have been a last resort, it's because it's the effective thing to do when negotiations break down or when the council is basically not budging. You need to understand that when we talk about living standards and wages and why so many people have seen their wages stagnate in the last 10 years, even longer, is because less people are in unions. When you look at the evidence, like if you're in a union, the average is you're going to get paid 6.5% more, because when you come together, stand up to bosses, then there's some kind of compromise that happens that makes it better for workers. You can't let bosses just do what they want to do.
Okay. Well, look, we're going to be taking a couple of more of your calls after the break. Welcome back. We're taking a couple of more of your calls on the Birmingham bin strike. Let's speak to Ian, who's in Belfast. Ian, welcome to the show. Ian, can you hear us?
Oh, yes, I can perfectly.
Ian, I believe you are in the same profession.
Yes, I am. And good morning to you. But nobody dumps rubbish on the side of a road like pallets, as the lady said before, office chairs, cabinets.
Yeah. But Ian, what are your thoughts about the strikes? Do you understand where the refuse workers are coming from? Do you support their strikes?
Yes, I definitely do. That you can't cut somebody's wages.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the job. A lot of people have been calling in saying, look, it's a hard job. It's a physically demanding job. It can be also quite dangerous. Looking at the amount of rubbish that's in the streets, how dangerous is the clear-up going to be?
Well, you have to control it. You do it in a dignified manner.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't jump in hands and feet first. You have a look to see what you're going to lift.
Yeah. I can imagine that also the stuff being left out for so long. There's going to be all sorts of stuff in there. Ian, thank you. Josephine's in London. Josephine, welcome to the show. Do you think that the strikers should get back to work immediately, or do you support them carrying on striking?
Hi, good morning all. I have to err on the side of they have to get back to work immediately. This really is unacceptable for all of the reasons that everybody has said. I can really appreciate the refuse collector who has just spoken. There are other issues. There is a difference between domestic waste and those who were, blatantly fly tipping. But we have to go back to Naeem. Naeem's video report earlier on absolutely illustrates everything. He's cleaning his own rubbish. He's cleaning the household rubbish from maybe another 3 or 4 households. He tells us that Birmingham Council are broke. In fact, he tells us that it's been 20 years or so that they've been left to their own devices. Yeah. Come on.
And let's not forget Birmingham council tax is going to go up. But Josephine, though, just one question. Faiza was saying about the fact that if you don't go on strike, then employers will just keep chipping away at those wages and chipping away at those wages. How are those workers meant to put food on the table for their families?
I can really appreciate where those workers are coming from, whether they're in a union or not. But everybody right now is struggling to put food on the table, to pay their bills, to manage the children, to do whatever it is that they need to do. But we cannot live in a situation. How many times do we hear, we import the third world and this is what happens and this is, look at over there. And this is Birmingham. Somebody mentioned earlier on, if this was happening in London, it wouldn't go a week. Why is it allowed to happen in Birmingham?
Josephine, thank you. A good question to leave it on.